So this video wants to look at the sexual marketplace. Right? So what is that? What does that mean? We can loosely define the sexual marketplace as the exchange, right? Exchange of sexual content, services, or experiences that have economic value, right? So there's an exchange taking place of some kind of economic value, usually money, for sexual content, services, or experiences. Okay, so the two main areas that we look at the most with this is with pornography and then with sex work. Okay, now these two topics tend to include a lot of other areas. So we have things like psychology, economics, technology, ethics, law, public health, so on and so forth. There's a lot of different areas that this touches on. So what we want to do in our discussion and review of this is emphasize that the goal here is not to persuade us towards a particular viewpoint, right? That's not what I'm trying to do, but rather we just want to understand what research is out there and the complexity of these issues. Okay, and so maybe a question that we can have just to kind of guide some of the things that are going to be discussed are, why do topics like this, why do topics related to sexuality often generate such strong opinions, right? So social opinions, political opinions, right? Everybody has strong opinions on that. Why does this particular topic of sexuality generate those strong opinions? Okay. All right, so when we look at, let's consider pornography for a moment. Right, this is something that's existed for hundreds, thousands of years, right? It's taken on different forms, and for the vast majority of that history, it's been kind of contained to physical mediums, all right, physical media, all right? So if we go back just, let's say 30 years or so, right? If someone wanted to view pornography, it's something they had to actually go and buy somewhere, right? They had to go to a store and buy a physical magazine or a videotape or a DVD, whatever it is, right? Or they had to go somewhere physical and watch a performance, right? What we've seen changed over the last 20, 30 years is that pornography is more widely available through the internet. That tends to be the primary means in which most people interact with this media, right? Now, as far as viewing pornography, the research tends to be a little mixed, right? So some studies suggest that pornography can provide sexual education for some viewers. Okay, it can increase sexual exploration and can be a part of healthy sexual expression. However, other research also finds that possible concerns include unrealistic expectations. So yes, it can help with education, but is it the right type of education, right? It can cause relationship conflict for couples, and it can also lead to compulsive use. Okay? So an interesting kind of part of this is what we call moral incongruence. Okay, moral incongruence. This is when someone experiences distress because their behaviors and what they're doing is in conflict with their personal or religious beliefs. Okay, so even if the pornography use itself is not compulsive or clinically problematic, if it's in conflict with their personal religious beliefs, it can lead to distress. So the emotional experience of it can be different, even if the actual behavior is similar or the same. Okay. All right, so that's one area. As we said, pornography. We also said sex work. All right, so sex work is something that can include a variety of different occupations, including things like stripping, other erotic performances, phone or online sexual services, recording pornographic material, escort services, and prostitution. Okay. Now, laws for this vary dramatically across the world, right? In some countries, what we're going to see, we're going to criminalize everything, right? Other places, we're going to decriminalize certain forms, or we want to regulate it, right? So parts of it are legal, but it has to follow these certain regulations. What we want to distinguish between, though, is what is consensual adult sexual work, whether legal or illegal, but it's consensual. And we want to distinguish that between human trafficking in sexual exploitation. They are not synonymous. They are not the same thing. These are different things. Consensual adult sex work is different from human trafficking and sexual exploitation. Okay, so let's consider two scenarios. In one, an adult independently creates a subscription-based online content, right? So they create an OnlyFans account or something similar to that. That's different than someone who is being coerced or trafficked into commercial sexual activity, right? So the actual behavior, let's say recording themselves or providing that kind of content, the behavior is the same. One person is doing it because they choose to, and they are an adult who has that possibility. Another person is being trafficked or coerced into doing that. And that is something that we want to eliminate. Okay. So with this, we often will see kind of a recurring topic we've had about stigma, right? So one way we can look at stigma, it's almost like a social process, right? It devalues people. It can negatively affect their health and well-being. Okay, so stigma can lead to such things as discrimination, potentially even reduce access to healthcare, or reluctance to seek out services, even mental health services. People feel more isolated, and potentially we could even look at things like safety concerns. So how we can reduce stigma individually, we can try to reduce internalized shame. We can try to build out supportive networks. At a community level, we can have peer support, education. We're able to have services that are non-judgmental. And maybe even at an institutional level, we can try to improve access to healthcare, reduce that discrimination, and promote safer working conditions. Right? Those are some things to consider. It was mentioned before about how access to pornography has changed over time, in particular now because of technology. It's transformed overall the entire sexual marketplace, right? So we have things like streaming platforms, there are subscription content, webcam services, virtual reality, artificial intelligence, social media. Okay, all these things are changes, but those changes can provide opportunities and also challenges. Right? So possible opportunities for people who engage in sex work, it's greater autonomy, broader access to more audiences and people, and then increased privacy for some creators because they have more control over those things. But at the same time, concerns are privacy violations. Right? We'll have some discussion, thought-provoking questions for that one. Non-consensual image sharing, right? Deepfake pornography, which is kind of more and more prevalent. Online harassment, exploitation. Okay, so advances in technology also include advances in AI, right, and all the concerns that come with that, particularly with deepfakes. Okay, so closing questions for us to consider again to help us with our critical thinking or just some reflection for us. How should society balance freedom of expression, privacy, and protection from harm in digital spaces? Right? How can we kind of separate that? How can society protect people, right? Protect people who need it from exploitation while also trying to respect autonomy and reduce stigma, right? How can we do that so everything is being accomplished, right? How has the internet changed the commercial sexual marketplace? And in particular, maybe what ethical issues arise from AI-generated content, right? How that it's impacting things. So again, it's just some important questions for us to consider so we can better apply a lot of these concepts that we're talking about.